The Backrooms movie is right around the corner. Directed by Kane Parsons, aka Kane Pixels, it is an extension of his already incredibly popular online series of the same name. The story and lore of the series is incredibly depthful. In my opinion, what makes it so great is that it mixes traditional cinematic storytelling with the trappings of online video storytelling from the analog horror genre. It's a show on YouTube that you can watch casually, but also a puzzle to put together if you're more invested. Closer to 3 years ago now, I made a video on the lore and story of the Backrooms series by Kane. A video I still feel holds up pretty well. While not perfect, I still think it encapsulates my thoughts on the series overall. But I didn't make anything covering the newer videos to come out afterwards, from Found Footage 3 onwards. So today, we're going to fix that. First, we'll have a sort of director's cut of my original video with updates. Me breaking in to explain things a little bit better, change my thoughts around, and give more context. Then, after that, I'll start exploring the newest videos, including the trailers for the film, or at least what I can show of them without getting copyright struck by A24. If you'd like to skip to the coverage of the newest videos, here's a timestamp for that. This will be my coverage of Found Footage 3 up to the newest trailers, as well as my theories and thoughts on what might happen in the movie. Anyway, enough preamble. Let's get into it. Strap in, because we're going to clip back into the Backrooms. Hopefully, we make it out alive again. The Backrooms has been popular online for nearly 5 years now. Starting as a simple creepypasta based on the seemingly natural uneasiness brought on by some liminal spaces, it has slowly grown to have its own fandom and basically become a subgenre of internet horror. From games to books to a wiki, which is its own thing entirely. But we aren't going to talk about all of that today. Today, we're focusing on one version of the Backrooms by one specific creator, Kane Pixels. I hadn't watched his Backrooms videos until after watching The Oldest View, which you can find my videos on here linked in the description. Until this point, I'd kind of lumped them in with a lot of other Backrooms content, but I can say after watching them that I was wrong to do that. Kane Pixels' version of the Backrooms takes a very science fiction approach to the Backrooms, which harkens to Stranger Things, the early works of David Cronenberg, and so much more. But it is still its own thing, using techniques and storytelling methods that lend themselves to the place and platform the videos are hosted on, the internet and YouTube. Also, this video is coming out before the Backrooms movie releases, which Kane is working on with A24. That movie could bring a whole heap of changes to the lore or be its own self-contained story. We don't know yet. So yeah, since it's been like 3 years since I made this video, we do actually know now. The Backrooms movie takes place within the continuity of the YouTube series. Apparently, it takes place sometime in June or July of 1990, as Kane confirmed in his exclusive interview with Wendigoon in this video here.
When's the film set? The 90s? 93, right? 1990, okay.
June, July 1990.
Okay.
The YouTube series is just at the end of May 1990, so it's right there.
Okay, gotcha. So we're all within the same, few months of each other?
Yep.
Whether the impact of the movie will be large or small in the series overall on YouTube is something we don't know yet, but I'm sure it will affect it in some way. So let's pull on our hazmat suits, because today, we're getting lost in the Backrooms. To start us off, I'd like to let you know we're going to mainly follow the perspective of Async. With that in mind, we will be skipping the very first episode, The Backrooms Found Footage, until later. As I did with Kane Pixels' other series, The Oldest View, I recommend you go watch the Backrooms series, or at least the first handful of videos before watching this one, as there will be full spoilers throughout this video. I'll also be following the Backrooms playlist primarily, so if I miss something, that's why. And the dates marked for each episode in this video were taken from the descriptions of each individual Backrooms episode posted by Kane Pixels. These dates mark each episode's point in the universe's timeline and chronology, unless stated otherwise. We start off with March 11th, 90 archive.tar, June 1991. I describe this video as a sort of mood board of video to set the stage for the series from this point on. We see a number of images, all related to either the backrooms or some type of scientific work. And then there's this. I don't know what this one is about. He's looking out there, but he has this typing posture and then is on this computer. It's just silly. Anyway, the next episode is when the story actually starts, titled The Third Test, July 2nd, 1988. A creepy, robotic voice reads us out the information on Async, a research institute that has conducted a test with a device known as the
Low Proximity Magnetic Distortion System.
The vice director, Ivan Beck, states the intent for the test during a press conference, which is to create storage and residential services for the future. This is all setting the stage, but the specifics of this short video are also important for later dissection and theories. After this, we will establish First Contact, October 17th, 1989. Another test is run, but this one ends with a successful connection established to the complex, aka the back rooms. The low proximity magnetic distortion system somehow connects to the back rooms through what are known as null zones, aka the places where the back rooms intersect with our own reality. It's basically how people clip out of our world and into the back rooms. The back rooms is a sort of dimension that is near or runs alongside our own in some way. The energy that this connection and test produces is so powerful that it apparently causes an earthquake in California, known as the Loma Prieta earthquake of 1989, which is a real event that happened. This was originally told to the viewers by a link to this video in the description of First Contact, and was later removed. For what reason, I do not know. It was removed because he didn't know if he liked the lore implications of it causing a real-life bad event, but he eventually did add it back anyway. Let's pause on the Kane Pixel story and talk about what the Backrooms is generally, because it is important to have context for this whole series. Earlier I said that the Backrooms started as a creepypasta. So, what are the Backrooms? The Backrooms started as one of the many modern horror creations that come about because of internet and memes, like Slender Man or The Rake. And just like both of those, apparently the Backrooms started on 4chan. I didn't know that until I was actually doing research for this video, but Wikipedia along with a few independent journalists and forum posts say that this is the case. Which is crazy to me because I feel like it's existed for a lot longer than from 2019 when it apparently started. But the concept of the Backrooms is really only 4 years old. Maybe what I remember is more the talk of creepy liminal spaces in general, and that kind of thing has just been conglomerated into the Backrooms at large. In the original post, a person had asked for pictures that leave you with a disquieting or off feeling. Someone posted a version of this image here, which we now relate to the Backrooms, and then another anonymous user added this. If you're not careful, and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the Backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, and the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell heard you. When I first heard of the Backrooms, this is what it was. In video games, sometimes if you clip out of a map, you can find extra areas that were left over by developers. But imagine clipping out of reality and finding yourself in the leftover areas unused by God or whatever created our world, and you're just left there. Nobody's home, or someone is home, but you don't know what. That is the real-world origin of the idea of the Backrooms, and Kane Pixel's approximation runs close enough with the themes while adding its own twists and turns. So now that we know how it started in online culture, let's find our way back to the story of Kane's version, which involves missing persons, February 3rd, 1990. 4 months after the previous episode. After the connection is established to the complex, it's assumed that async science teams began to explore this new dimension that they'd found. I assume this because of the time it's taken from the previous episode, as well as the seemingly established procedures followed by the scientists in this video. While exploring, they happen across a body that has had something seriously strange happen to it. The person is obviously dead, but they seemingly have something growing on or around them. They aren't decaying normally. They almost look like plaster. Before the episode cuts out, we see a flick of some words on the screen which say, "If anybody, blame him." So you remember how I told you we were skipping things earlier? Well, now we're going to discuss them because they've just become important. If you've seen the series before, you'd know that at the beginning of the episode I just spoke about, Missing Persons, there is a segment that I skipped, where we see a number of missing persons posters of people who have, well, gone missing. This is followed by a line graph showing a sharp increase in missing persons cases, the first time around when their third test was done, and the second and continuous, non-stop increase when the actual portal known as the threshold to the backrooms is established. We can make an informed guess that the attempts, both failed and successful, are the cause for these increases in missing persons cases as people are clipping into the backrooms. When Async established this connection to this alternate reality, it seems to have created more and more portals, or null zones, in our world that are pulling people into the backrooms. Now, we need to go back to the start of this series, but not the timeline. You'll see what I mean later. The first episode, the one we skipped, the one that started all of this, was called Found Footage Number 1. Recording began July 4th, 1991. Found on September 23rd, 1996. A young man, a teenager or probably a man in his early 20s, was shooting a short film with his friends on the 4th of July, 1991, as seen on the production slate. As they were shooting, he was pulled from our dimension into that of the backrooms. Camera in hand, he documents his experiences there, which sadly end in his death at the hands of some kind of black, wiry entity. This entity chases him throughout the backrooms, roaring monstrously. He's grabbed right before he can escape, though we as the audience see that from the camera falling, he wouldn't have really escaped death anyway. Strangely enough, the date in the description of the video is September 23rd, 1996. Why is that when we saw that the date on the clicker at the start was July 4th, 1991? Well, the Backroom Wiki's entry states that the date in question, September 23rd, 1996, is when the camera was found after landing on someone's property. If this were true, it would either mean that he was sucked into the future, or that the backrooms and the different holes that lead to it don't work on a regular timescale like our reality does. Or maybe even lead to specific points in time themselves. Imagine like the paintings from Super Mario 64, except instead of taking you to a very cute and wonderful location, they take you to an infinite hellscape of hallways and black, wiry, monstrous entities. So, what we've learned is there is some kind of entity in the backrooms that is seemingly hostile to humans, that the backrooms more than likely does not operate on time as we know it, at least through the different null zones, and this person greatly resembles the missing persons poster at the start of Missing Persons for Nicholas Bolton, and that if you die in the backrooms, it seems that something happens to you and your body after you die. What that is, we don't know yet, but we will know more soon. We start by learning that Async has a biomedical department. The scientist doing the autopsy theorizes that the dead person, more than likely Nicholas as I said earlier, died of malnutrition only 5 or so days ago. Though we know there are other possibilities. Maybe the monsters aggressively suck your nutrients from your body. His body looks even worse than before, almost as if it's made out of paper mache. As the conductor of the autopsy notes, certain parts of the body have stopped decaying, while others took on their natural course. Certain parts have been completely overtaken by what looks to be a fungus, but he decides it is actually a bacillus, a very common bacterium on Earth that is found not only in the human stomach, but in the top layers of Earth's soil. The man asks the nearby Dr. Beck, who seems to be observing the autopsy,
"May I ask where this subject came from?"
Meaning this is all pretty hush-hush if even the autopsy conductor does not know about this situation completely. The episode cuts to reveal it is being watched on a television, which then plays a number of different images along with audio referring to different parts of the series' past, present, and possibly future. It ends with an ominous red glow overlaid over the backrooms, which then turns into a sunset. This episode is important for a number of reasons, establishing the fact that people, dead or possibly otherwise, mutate within the backrooms, or something changes them, and that Ivan Beck is a big player behind the scenes, as this is the second time he's been mentioned. To clarify, because this is something that gets commented a lot, when I say mutate here, I don't mean that they're literally transforming, just being changed. Their bodies are literally changing. As I said in my Backrooms ranking video, and we'll explore later in this very video, a big theory I have is that the Backrooms itself is akin to a living organism. The Habacillus seen here could be digesting the body to take it in, which could also be how the Backrooms absorbs memories and creates new locations within itself. The evidence could lean towards this further if we knew what parts of the body were being preserved, as was said in this video. Anyway, still love this episode. The body is just so spooky, and when I say later that the monsters come from the people, I don't mean literally that the monsters are the people. I mean the monsters are like being created from their bodies, which is a different thing. And yeah, when I say mutate, I don't mean like that person is actually becoming the monster. I mean their body is changing. That's what I meant.
Welcome to the Project KV-31 Research and Development Team.
Informational video, February 5th, 1990. We begin by watching an async employee training video about the do's and don'ts of interacting with the threshold and the complex, before cutting to a team of 4 scientists exploring within the complex. One of the 4, the one currently holding the camera, known as Peter Tench, hears a strange sound and goes to investigate.
Guys, do you hear this?
He seemingly steps into one of the null zones by accident and is transported away from his team. He wanders around for a bit, finding this spooky area that almost looks like a set for a stage play, before wandering into a seemingly new room and setting off an alarm. I wonder where this is going. This video establishes Peter Tench, who will become a very important character. We also learn the project scientific name, KV-31, and it is also basically confirmed that the door, the threshold, the entire unit is the low proximity magnetic distortion system. We then detect some motion in Motion Detected, March 5th, 1990. This episode seems to be a bit more for atmosphere than anything, though we do get to see this here at the end. This is the first time that Async is encountering one of the entities, or at least the first time they get to see a little peek of them. There are a lot of episodes like this that give us a little bit of unimportant information, but they do give you a bit of world building, seeing how Async is operating, seeing different aspects of the backrooms, and just getting you into the situation. The squiggly stick figure-like entities do have an official name. They are called the Life Forms, and that is more than likely what this is, but we can't really tell at this distance. This is also the first time we see Async's outward operating base that is built in the backrooms itself. We can see the frames of it here before it is actually completed. Pitfalls, May 6th, 1990. A team of 4 scientists venture out into the complex. We see that they've been building within the backrooms, creating a sort of command center for viewing and safety reasons more than likely. This does look very familiar, doesn't it? On one of their expeditions, they encounter a room with a series of holes. When one of them, named Mark, crosses to the door over the holes, he seemingly finds something amazing, and he asks the cameraman to come over and see it with him.
Marvin, get the camera over here.
Across?
Fine, just hurry.
The cameraman, Marvin, does his best to get across, but slips and falls into one of the holes. Now we see why it's called Pitfalls. This is Editing Ghosts here, and I just wanted to say that Kane really likes to have people fall in his works, and it makes me wonder if he has like a fear of heights or something like that. Anyway, that's all. Yeah, back to the video. While in this hole, he hears what sounds like a person yelling and calling out for help.
What was that?
What was what?
I think there's somebody down here.
What?
I hear yelling. Like, a person is yelling.
Some of it makes sense, and some of it sounds like incoherent nonsense, almost like a tape is being sped up. Despite his team asking him not to, and us as the viewers also feeling unsure, he goes to investigate.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to find them. I know how to get back. It's fine.
Oh, man. Keep us posted.
As he moves towards the sound, he finds a recreation of a suburban city, streetlights, foliage, sky, and all. The voice continues to call out, so he continues forward until he reaches a house at the end of this faux street. The lights are on in the house, which means somebody must be home. Again, he hears that voice calling from within.
Can you hear me?
He enters, and it's not right. He goes deeper into the house, and I do mean deeper. Look at how long this hallway is. This is a nice little reminder that even though this looks normal, we are still in the backrooms. And we get a full-blown shotgun blast of a reminder when he enters this room, which looks like a weird dungeon. And then, again, here's that voice. Only to realize as he rounds this corner that it is not a person calling out. The build-up to this moment is incredible. Of course, we as the audience probably knew something wasn't right from the very beginning. But we were hopeful that maybe he would find a person. But the reveal that it's one of the creatures that we've already encountered, either having learned English or just copying the final words of one of its victims, is bone-chilling.
Marvin,
That's not a person.
what is that?
That is not a fucking person!
What? Marvin, talk to me. What do you see? What's going on? Talk to us. What's happening?
Since this is YouTube, I can imagine that some people started this series with this episode, and I can only imagine how intense this moment would have been for a new viewer. Yes, it is basically a spooky stickman, but the fact that you can barely see it, our perspective character becomes so obviously frightened and begins to run, especially because it is right behind him the entire time just screaming, whether just getting louder or closer, we also don't know. The noise just sounds so close, but he never turns around, which I think is kind of smart. Marvin does manage to escape, and when he gets back to where he started, he can still hear it screaming.
Gonna take a moment. Grab it hold it.
Him and his team get back and they report their findings to HQ. Before we move on, I'd like to touch on a couple of things more deeply. First, this suburb feels like the first time we are seeing such a specific and detailed location in the backrooms. Of course, there were many varied locations in found footage number 1, but this suburb to me feels far more intricate, as if it was pulled directly from someone's specific memories, which is a theme that will come up more and more as the series goes on, and possibly came up back in informational video. Second is the idea of red light and the red sun. Both here in Pitfalls and in a recreated city in the Backrooms Found Footage Part 3 later on, we see red light, as well as a red sunset overlaid onto the backrooms in Autopsy Report. Honestly, the sun and specifically red suns come up quite a bit in this series. This is in tandem with the Backrooms OST Volume 3, which literally has a song called Red Sun in the Sky. Red suns, of course, do have real-world symbolism for many cultures, but for the most part is seen as an omen of sorts, a warning of change or danger. And in meteorological terms, a red sun can be a warning of literal bad things, as the sun appears red when filtering large particles through its light, which could be a sign of serious weather events such as a volcanic eruption. We also know Kane really likes the Splendor Sun, which is itself symbolic of divinity and power. Anyway, just thought I'd bring that all up. Report, May 6th, 1990. The team make it back, relatively unscathed, at least physically. Their footage and audio is reviewed by async higher-ups. Another scientist walks around in a way that says, "I'm very important," and then makes very serious phone calls. They put a wooden wall up to block the area off where those holes are, which, I mean, doesn't look like it'd do much to protect them, but it's better than nothing, I guess. And seemingly build a reinforced viewing panel facing also in the direction of that area, so that's good. Good to see that they're at least trying to take one strong safety measure. That'll come off really well in their presentation, May 8th, 1990. In this video, we get to see a bit more of what Async plans to do with the Backrooms, aka the complex, which they are calling A-Space in this product video. They advertise it as storage, residential spaces, workspaces, and much more, even seemingly pushing the idea that it could offset the negative effects that humans have on our Earth with global warming. What's a few people disappearing into a terrifying alternate dimension if we save the planet, right? Or at least that's what Async thinks. At the same time, they are giving what seems to be a Department of Energy higher-up a tour and behind-the-scenes look at the project. Just as the scientists of Async sit down to talk with the DOE suit, the man, Peter Tinch, from informational video shows up. This confirms that he wasn't actually teleported away from his team, but ahead of them in time. What will Async do? A big secretive research institute like this will probably do the upstanding moral thing and help the guy out, right? Big catch nearly 3 years after I made this original video. In the middle of this video, a cut between the presentation to the government agent being moved around happens, and there's a flash of something on the screen. I screenshotted it and flipped it around and edited it, and what it says is pretty cool. I'm sure other people have seen it and found it, but I wanted to point this out. So yeah, it says to deceive the FEDE, which is probably federal government, so that means that in some way, shape, or form, Async is deceiving the federal government about what they're actually doing or what this is. We don't really know how, if they're deceiving them in how dangerous the Backrooms is, or what the project is really about, but that is a big deal, and I can't believe I missed it before. _recording 014, May 8th, 1990. We hear a man named Clyde making a phone call to Ivan Beck, who we know is the vice director and possibly the lead of Project KV-31. We get the confirmation that the contracts with the Department of Energy were signed off on, meaning that the meeting went well, and also that someone who isn't on the project showed up, completely disoriented. We know this person to be Peter Tinch, who it seems Async has tried to basically erase, based on the fact that Clyde, whether new or otherwise, has no idea who he is, and when the call ends, it is seemingly confirmed by an image in the background that Async had faked Peter's death to the public in a fake car crash. Ivan Beck also seems to ask Clyde if he was the only one there, which heavily implies that they are going to try and hide the return of Peter Tinch, which is very soon confirmed.
Probably over the cameras. I'm the last one here. Everyone else has headed home. No, it's just me.
It's time for a heartfelt reunion, May 25th, 1990. 17 days after recording 14, two teams of Async scientists head into the complex. One such team begins a construction project, building a walkway over the holes around the pitfalls, except for the two in the center, one of which we know leads to the place Marvin had fell and encountered the monster. While this happens, the second team explores a nearby area, finding many things: a new type of area, a split in the ground between the two, writing that is obviously from some type of sentient being, possibly a person, which maps out the area, and last but not least, Peter Tinch. Peter ambushes them and grabs Mark's shotgun, and to everyone's surprise, he is still alive, showing that they had, in fact, accepted him as dead based on Async's word. He finds out that they had faked his death.
They did. They took my life from me, Marv. Everyone thinks I'm fucking dead. My wife and children think I'm dead.
Can you please put down the gun?
Barbara, just tell me. Did they hold a funeral?
Yes.
And Mark, for some reason, decides to radio command to ask for armed support, saying that Peter is a hostile.
14C, my team and I are being held at gunpoint by a hostile.
This leads to Peter shooting Mark, and Async has to do some damage control. May 26th, 1990. Peter seems to escape. At least, we think he does. After the beginning of this video and the revelations from Reunion, what seems to be an Async higher-up gives a speech to the scientists working on KV-31, aka the complex, aka the Backrooms.
It's been a stressful 15 hours for all of us here, and while he can't currently be with us, Dr. Beck sends his apologies regarding the numerous inconveniences caused by our decision to keep you here overnight.
The man sounds incredibly well-versed in corporate PR nonsense and keeps his cool all throughout, despite how serious these matters are. In this speech, the async representative breaks down the events that occurred in regards to Peter Tinch, from the trip into the backrooms in which he disappeared all the way to his escape the previous night. When Peter appeared in their forward operating base nearly 2 months later, they took him in to run some tests.
Following this discovery, Tinch was moved to a secure room on this floor, where over the following days, a select group of doctors were able to administer a panel of tests in order to determine what had happened to Peter in the 2 months he'd been gone.
To Peter, he'd only been missing for a few hours, but to the outside world in async, it had been 2 months. He seemed healthy and normal, all things considered, says this higher-up. They say that they were working to reintegrate Peter, which was difficult because they had covered up his death with a car crash.
Understood this and was willing to cooperate while we looked for a way to reintegrate him without raising suspicion. Unfortunately, though, that process ended up taking quite a bit longer than we had anticipated. And all the while, Peter was sucked out here, waiting idly by.
But apparently, he began to exhibit signs of sudden onset schizophrenia.
At the end of week 2, we noticed that he was starting to exhibit a number of behaviors common in patients diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia.
If this async representative is to be believed, he suddenly thought that this async research facility and the people around him were an illusion created by the backrooms, and that they were all out to get him. They don't show any evidence of this, but it is a likely story, maybe? So somehow, again without evidence, they show that he managed to escape from them, despite all of their protocol, back into the complex. He then hid there for 3 days before encountering Marvin and Mark's team, shooting Mark and escaping again. This is where things get even more interesting. The async representative claims that Peter escaped the Institute, ran off into the nearby woods, and fell, hitting his head on a rock and dying from the sudden concussive blow. As the Kane Pixels Backrooms wiki points out, they had a lot of footage of Peter, but seemingly did not show footage of him running into these woods despite showing off so much other footage. He ends the speech off saying that
what we're doing here is so much bigger than any one person.
And that they're going to keep on with the project and that Peter was a good scientist. And then we cut to see 5 different images flashing in quick succession.
But we hold on to the pre-established notion that Peter is and has been deceased. That is done, and there is nothing more to be extracted.
1, a boardroom with distorted-looking people, possibly a drawing of the meeting that we just heard in this video. 2nd, a man facing a large flash of green energy. Wow. And 3rd, what seems to be a cluttered bedroom. Then the 4th and 5th images are of a man running into a city. Me and most people believe that this is Peter Tinch, having actually escaped. We then cut to a phone, eerily ringing as ambient noise plays in the background of what seems to be an empty house. We do have more to cover. We actually have to go back, or forward if you're going by the in-universe timeline rather than the upload date. Again, time shenanigans. Because, as I said before, I've skipped some things so we could present the async storyline as linearly as possible. But before we go back, let's go ahead and establish my thoughts on what we've seen so far. I do not believe that Peter Tinch is dead, at least the way that they said that he's dead. Based on those clips that we saw, being similar to the other of Peter Tinch, I believe that he escaped into the city, and seeing the phone at the end possibly called someone, maybe even his wife or his home. I also find it hard to believe any of the other parts of Async's story, especially considering it is all this man's word with no evidence. Yes, they do show Peter escape, but they don't show any of the evidence of them trying to get him back into society. They don't try to show any of him in containment or the interviews with him. They just show him escaping, and they don't even show the footage of him running into the woods. I think the series does a good job of showing us things when they're important, and a lot of the things that this HR representative for Async said are not shown. How do we know they were actually trying to reintegrate him? How do we know he so easily escaped into the backrooms just on their word? From my perspective, it seems like it would be a lot easier for Async to just let him accidentally get back into the backrooms and just disappear. I also find it hard to believe the sudden onset of schizophrenic symptoms they claimed he had. especially considering when he encountered Marvin and Mark's team, he didn't really say anything overly crazy, just reality. Yes, he was very frantic, but he had been in the backrooms for 3 days and had to deal with the reality that his death had been faked. Everything he said to Mark and Marvin was the truth, that they had faked his death. He didn't say it was all fake or that they were out to get him.
They did. They took my life from me, Marv. Everyone thinks I'm fucking dead. My wife and children think I'm dead.
And only shot Mark when Mark escalated the situation. To me, this speaks that he was at least partially of sound mind considering the circumstances, since he didn't just go off immediately, shooting them. That shows that he really didn't think they were out to get him. And all of that is without taking into account the fact that immediately upon seeing him, Mark did not try to de-escalate the situation, but instead started radioing for armed backup. Which to me not only reads like Mark knows something that we don't about Peter and his situation, but also that Async might have a kill on sight order for him or something, because that is a drastic and frankly stupid escalation. I do hope Peter did escape. I hope that Async security didn't catch up to him and find him dead having bashed his head against a rock. Maybe he'll become our unlikely protagonist that takes Async down. I wanted to hope and think that throughout the series, Async isn't an evil corporate entity or something like that, because that is a really played out trope in science fiction. But it also isn't an untrue one. Many corporate and business entities, which Async seems to at least partially be since they want to sell the backrooms as a product, do horrific things in the name of profit, for far less important products than possibly unlimited space, which is a real-world issue. We shall see, though. For the most part, this is, to me, still a pretty realistic representation of these types of businesses and people. No one is just outright callous. It feels like they're doing the things they do because they feel they have to, even if I personally think it's immoral. If Async personnel did keep Peter, they might have thought it was best for the project, which they may think is good for mankind, even if they do plan to make money along with benefiting humanity. They're not wrong in saying that the different things that they propose for the backrooms could help us with climate change, storage, and housing. 2026 Ghosts here again, and I just want to say that my opinion on this has changed quite a bit. For Async, remember that some of the greatest villains in history are those who believe they are doing just things in their actions. I guess it's a matter of perspective. For people who would benefit from the backrooms being utilized as they want, it could be seen as a great boom. But what about all those who died from falling in, their families? Is it right to have a sacrifices must be made mentality if the sacrifices are unwilling or unknowing? Not to mention the fact that they apparently deceived the US government, as it said earlier, which look, the US government is not great by any stretch of the imagination, but the idea of them deceiving them kind of shows they know something or are doing something underhanded. So yeah, Async bad, probably. Anyway, having said all that, we need to go back in time, back into the backrooms, or forward in time, forward and backwards. Like I said earlier, we skipped some things. Happened to take a different turn along the way to follow the story of Async. Some other things happened that are important and we need to talk about them. So let's switch our cameras on. We're going back in. Found footage number 2, August 19th, 1995. A young woman has found a null zone or clipping area in her garage. She begins to record it only to fall through herself. Whether this is her fault or would have happened eventually, we do not really know. She encounters many of the strange deformities of the backrooms, from these odd chairs to this hole in the floor. There is a natural tension to her exploration, just like from the first found footage. You never know what is going to happen. It keeps you on edge. In my notes, I compared this to Paranormal Activity, because in those movies and a lot of modern horror cinema, you usually have to wait 2 hours for a payoff. Not only does this video have well done and consistent tension building, it also has a satisfying payoff in only 13 minutes, and that really is something that I have to give everything by Kane Pixels credit for. She continues to explore, hearing distant noises. Eventually, she enters a large room with a crashed car. The yellow wallpaper. A car, driving down what seems to be an interstate, just disappears, swerving as if the driver sees something before they disappear. A commenter on the video, Fricket Wee Ball, notes that the video's title translates to the yellow wallpaper in the ISBN book code. The Yellow Wallpaper is a short story by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. In the story, a woman, trapped in a small room by her husband because of her mental health difficulties, slowly loses her mind over time, hyper-focusing on the yellow wallpaper in the room. She becomes obsessed with the wallpaper, to the point of imagining a woman trapped within or behind it, which she eventually decides is herself. This is an interesting literary reference to make, and I might theorize on it more deeply later, but for now, this is how the car gets into the area our protagonist from found footage number 2 finds. I have to clear this up because I'm going to get comments. When I say this is how it ends up there, I mean the car clipped into the back rooms. I don't mean it's this specific car. Again, this is something that Kane likes to do in the series, a lot of dramatic irony. From this to the contents of Recording 14 before Reunion, finding out that Peter has had his death faked, and so much more, dramatic irony is a great tool to create suspense, and Kane Pixels uses it well in this series. Now, back to found footage number 2. Our unwitting protagonist approaches the car, seeing that it is coated in a sort of black soot. Whether this is from the car burning up or something else, we don't really know. I'm going to lean towards the car burning up. She goes to the nearby door-shaped hole in the wall, which has a black handprint next to it. She explores with the small light of her camera, eventually popping into a room covered in those tendril-like growths we'd seen coming from Nicholas's body. She looks throughout the room, confused as it is so different from the rest of the places she's been in so many ways, only for some of the tendrils to move, either calling out or yelling at her. She, of course, runs, as we the viewers have realized that this is one of our tendrily monster friends. She escapes, running back through many of the rooms she'd already seen, until hiding in a strange corner. Only this one is a dead end instead of a dead drop. As she sits, fearfully awaiting the monster to come and kill her, a blinding light appears behind her before cutting and showing us that this was, apparently, being watched on a TV. Directly after this, we get Home 27647.mov. Seemingly someone's home movie. A random conglomeration of different shots and pictures, though there are things that aren't right. One of the first things I noticed was this. In the background of this shot of the sunset, we can see what looks to be another body in the same condition Nicholas's was in autopsy report. A commenter known as JBoy19 noted that this map is a planispherium, a map of the universe that was created in 1660. I also theorized that this car is the same car that we saw crashed, or at least looks of a similar make from what I can tell. We see more of these bacteriums as well interspersed within, implying that this could be the person who died there. Then we see a room that looks incredibly similar to the room that the tendrily monster was in found footage number 2. What does this all mean? Considering we see another body in the background here, I imagine that this video was by the person who died in that car, and that the Backrooms, in a sense, stores people's memories when they die as data almost, physically transforming the space from their memories, different rooms and places that they had been and things like that. Recreates them as it does other things from our world, or something of that type. When you die there, you become one of these creatures, and your memories are absorbed, becoming part of the architecture. That would make some of these areas, this street that we saw in Pitfalls, this strange stage play-like area, make more sense. This modified bacteria might act as a sort of organic processor, taking people's memories and their bodies and using them as a sort of blueprint. It then takes this organic data and imperfectly combines it with the Backrooms. If that were the case, we could see the Backrooms as almost like a giant bioorganic hard drive, an amalgamation of different human consciousnesses. I also had the thought that the Backrooms, also known as the Complex, in Kane Pixels' version at least, is an entity itself. It isn't just an alternate dimension, but a sort of living being that is simultaneously a place. Some people like to think that Earth is a living being itself. Why not living in the typical sense that we think of life? It does sustain life. It has different systems, just like we do. Different things live within it. A system of beings that form an order within it that we dictate as life, like how we have cells and things. The Backrooms could be something similar. Like, what if that bacterium, that modified Hay bacillus, is all over it? What if it is made up of them? Of course, we don't have evidence of that, and I think that Async would have taken samples. Whether it has intent or is more like mushrooms or the bacteria that make up the monsters, I don't know. I can lean on this theory a bit more this much later because 27647, which is part of the number on that home movie title, is actually linked to a bacteria in the Bacillus family, same as Hay bacillus. It is another bacteria that is in the human body, and specifically in our gut and our lower digestional tract, which is, yeah, really interesting, and definitely on purpose. It is making me think that my theory that this bacteria is kind of storing people's memories and using them to make these places and these monsters is like right on the right track, which, you know, I'm not the only one who's thought about that, but it's fun to put together. But these are just thoughts that I had, and I have more, but again, we have to go back one more time. Prototype, May 10th, 1982. This is one of the earliest points in the timeline so far, but in a moment we will go back even further. This video seems to show a progenitor of the low proximity magnetic distortion system, a test that at least fires off. This test is overseen by one Philip R. Heyman, who I don't believe we've seen at this point. Now, time to go back 10 years earlier. Overflow, August 2nd, 1972. We hear an address being given by what is assumed to be a US government figure, talking about the government's relationship with Soviet Russia. As we look to a few beautiful landscapes, we then cut to a meter that's reading off some type of growing energy, a flash very similar to what we saw when the Backrooms portal was established, followed by a red overload button that then cuts into papers on a wall as something happens off screen, a splashing of that same green light that we saw from earlier. More than likely, a project being worked on by Ivan Beck, as the words on the page delineate. This is one of the bigger pieces to the puzzle that I've been working towards, and will play a part in a lot of my theorization from this point on. Overflow and Prototype both show and establish that not only was the Backrooms possibly created or connected to all the way back in 1972, but Ivan's involvement with it goes all the way back to possibly its creation or inception. He has been working on this project since 1972, if not earlier. We have one last stop, though. I Remember is a short unlisted video, no longer on the playlist for the Backrooms, but interesting all the same. It almost seems like someone reciting a poem about things fading in on themselves. I think this is a pretty haunting piece and recommend that you check it out. Like most everything else, I'll link it in the description. And that is where my coverage originally ended, as at the time, Overflow was the last video to release. But in 2024, Lighting and Tile Survey, followed by the magnificent Found Footage number 3, would be uploaded to his YouTube channel. Then Static Dead End would be uploaded in 2025, the last thing to come out on Kane's channel before he began full production of the Backrooms movie. So now it's time to cover those 3 videos. My original video's conclusion will be placed at the end after this coverage, as well as my additional theories and thoughts that are added by these newer videos and their revelations, including the trailers for the movie. Having said that, if you want to see the original version of the Backrooms video, it will be linked in the description. Found Footage number 3, date unknown. Found Footage number 3 starts off showing a montage of clips from the protagonist's life that they filmed. There is no date given on the footage or in the description of the video, but based solely on the quality of the camera and the fact that the car has a tape player, and there are no cell phones in the video, we can make an informed guess that this tape takes place sometime in the 90s or early 2000s, similar to the other ones. For once, our protagonist's name is featured in the description, and it is Ravi. He's played by the actor Akash Valdivia. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Something to note is Ravi is talking about Monsanto early on in the video and how some of their executives are basically doing evil and underhanded corporate stuff. which I obviously feel wasn't left in for no reason, in a way shading at async within the series itself by referencing a real-life evil corporation like Monsanto.
I realized I recorded a Monsanto exec joking with a DPR manager about a sick kid referring to it as the bug-eyed one. Right after that, one of them basically admitted to fault, which, mind you, they aren't doing publicly at all. They said something along the lines of, "You accidentally push out the entire county, you might just get that ranch you always wanted."
Ravi, one day, hears noises coming from the empty apartment below the one he's renting.
I was just calling to ask to see if there's anybody supposed to be checking out the downstairs today. Okay, so no, like, maintenance or anything?
And goes to investigate. And yes, I know it's a house, but if the floors are considered separate domiciles, I think apartment is a close enough description of his living space. What he finds is an entrance to the back rooms. I really wanted to say Twilight Zone right there. Look, the place below him was creepy enough on its own, honestly, including this horrifying poster of Arnold Schwarzenegger. But this specific entrance into the back rooms is important for many reasons. First, either someone went into it or something came out of it, breaking the glass to this door in the downstairs apartment. This could have big implications, or not, we won't know till later, but if something escaped the backrooms into our world, that is screwed. Second, this is the first entrance to the backrooms that seems to be fully established within our reality, besides the door used by Async themselves, which they basically established using technology. They forced it. This is literally a hallway that is breaking into his building that he's living in. Now, he does still clip into it, even if he enters what seems to be part of the backrooms. This could be a full-blown null zone that has established itself within our own reality. Like, literally a part of the backrooms is just in our reality, not just a hole. This almost conjures up the idea that the backrooms is invading our reality. I do have to say that I love the implication he basically fell down a really long slide and out of this cabinet door. I imagined it was pretty terrifying to happen, but still, from a viewing perspective, it's really fun. Ravi seems to think the place is directly under his house, like this is a part of the house.
I did not know this was here.
Which we all know, sadly, is not the case. He has arrived in what seems to be a faux office space, and as many of our protagonists do in this series, he begins to explore. Of course, the area looks normal enough at first, besides the obvious fact that he came down a cabinet slide, but as he explores, of course, it gets stranger and stranger. The first sign is different chairs that don't fit the theme of the place, including this defiant stool that chose to be on the counter instead of the floor. Then we have this. Door covered by a desk and also has a brick wall behind it. Fun! The backrooms itself, or someone begins to mess with Ravi as he hears the lights behind him click off and goes back to investigate. The door he came in through is closed. And as he turns to leave again, the lights come back on. And of course, he continues to explore. Eventually, he happens into another room full of random furniture and questions,
What? Furniture store now?
which I hope that is not a hint at the fate of Clark in the movie, because he seems like a cool character. And as is like to happen in these videos, eventually the areas he enters begin to get creepier and creepier until somebody or something begins to stalk and follow him. I also have to note that he seems to see something in this little cubbyhole. I don't know what it is, but he is really shocked by it. He literally says, "Oh my god."
Oh my god.
If you ask me, based on that reaction, there was probably something dead in that little cubby, maybe a person, but it's very hard to tell. I even raised the brightness on the image and I could not tell. But the fact that he says it smells like shit in there when he comes into the room also gives credence to the theory that it is a body he sees. Ravi, of course, begins to run because whatever it is acting really crazy. Kane uses the unseen really effectively here. We don't know what is chasing him, but we can see that it is scary, it is not communicating, and it can almost bust down a door, and then it does bust down a door when Ravi is moved on, so.
Hello? Hey!
As he runs, we see arguably one of the coolest and prettiest scenes and areas in the Backrooms, which is this red-lit city, which I mentioned earlier in this video, though I imagine he doesn't really have much time to dwell on the beauty of this, considering the fucked up nature of his situation. After encountering a rather strange mix of a house and playground-like area, Ravi flicks a nearby light switch to hide, only for the lights to come back on. Did the creature flick the lights back on? Was the creature what locked him in earlier? Also, did notice till rewatching this, but the noises the monster makes are so incredibly, distortedly human. And the music only plays when the monster is nearby, which is a really neat little detail, except at one other point, which I'll talk about later. After running away again, Ravi momentarily seems to have escaped, encountering more strange rooms and a rather ominous statue. Eventually, he hears something and enters a room with a speaker set up, playing some experimental electronica music. People also seem to focus on the fact that there is this sign with Mandarin on it, as well as some other objects from China and things with Mandarin on them, which the theory seems to be to show that the Backrooms is pulling from further and further places. Also, remember earlier how I talked about the red sun in the sky, the song? That's also a famous song from China that was strongly related to Mao Zedong and meant to honor him. Kane's version is obviously a reference to this, but I think it holds more symbolic significance within this video as well. Ravi passes through the room, seeing another exit sign. Of course, we as viewers are left to wonder if the Backrooms itself made this tech, or if it was left by async. Considering how strange the setup is and the fact that it's basically a tower in a room, it's far less likely to be async and far more likely that the Backrooms created this and was trying to copy someone's radio and music setup. Also noticing all the splendor suns, which I did mention earlier, but man, there's a lot of them, and man, do they just make things seem spooky. Ravi tries to use the radio that he found to contact someone from the outside world.
Does anybody copy?
No one seems to respond, or someone seems to respond.
Yes. 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 All right.
At first, he thinks he hears a voice, but then that gives over to the monstrous noises from earlier, and then he leaves to investigate it, only for loud music to begin playing again. I and many others wondered if the voices that he heard behind this door or somewhere else were async, but we don't really get to find out because the speakers behind him begin to play loud, just noise music, blaringly, which he runs back to turn off. That is when Ravi gets to encounter this guy. This creature has been dubbed Still Life by the fandom because the music that played earlier when he first encountered it, we can assume this is the monster that has been following him, is also called Still Life. When I first watched this video a year ago, I thought this might be one of the early stages of the black wiry creatures. I think I am both wrong and right. This thing almost seems to be human, but very similar to how the dead bodies from previous episodes looked, white, black, and kind of chalky. Now, that's not me saying that this thing is a person that was previously dead, more that it looks like how people have ended up when they died, which could correlate. The thing, of course, chases Ravi even more and screams in this horrifically, guttural way. It reminds me of the zombies from Half-Life 2, actually. Which isn't a surprise considering how much Kane says Valve's works have inspired him.
The most obvious one and the strongest one without a doubt would be anything that Valve has touched. It's probably pretty apparent that Portal is my biggest inspiration in life at all with any of the stuff I've ever made. Portal 2, both of them. Half-Life as well, anything in that universe.
But Ravi manages to block its progress and escape again. This is up there with one of the scariest moments in the entire series. I also love that it pauses momentarily on it. It almost feels more like a kind of documentary than a found footage horror in that moment. Also, there's this moment when he films what looks like a bug, but is also possibly tiny little black tentacles coming from under a wall. It's really hard to tell what this is, but one is a lot. I mean, they're both important, because if there's a bug in there, it means it's pulling bugs in, but if they're tiny little tentacles, that's an even bigger deal. Ravi continues exploring a now even more decrepit area of the Backrooms, full of garbage, looking run down and rusty. It's funny enough, this is probably one of my favorite areas just because it reminds me of Silent Hill. It's one of the creepiest areas that we've seen just from a pure vibe perspective, along with that area in Pitfalls that looked like a dungeon. Of course, he eventually happens back into the more premium areas of the Backrooms. Rent is going to be so high here and very low here, hopefully. In the distance, he sees reddish windows and looks out to see that beautiful, terrifying, large, red-lit cityscape again, with a park below and a giant road sign. It's very reminiscent of that suburb that we saw earlier, like I said earlier. It's interesting to look at this and think that all those buildings could be reached and explored by Ravi. Of course, that's a terrifying reality to him. He does find another sky bridge, showing even more of the city and the beautiful lights within it, which, as a viewer, it's beautiful, but for him, I imagine it is very terrifying. And then he finds his way back to the backroomiest of backrooms areas, the plain yellow wallpaper, and begins to run through them frantically. There is momentary hope as he sees this area with the circular chairs from earlier in the video. Of course, he decides not to go down near them, instead going further into the yellow wallpaper version of the Backrooms. He also happens upon a cutout of a caveman, which seems to confuse him a little bit, and I get why. It's like, why is this in this hallway? This shot is also kind of reminiscent of this one from the trailers, so that's kind of interesting. He eventually wanders into the area that is the thumbnail of the video, a very picturesque recreation of a house in a room covered in clouds. And look, this room has a lot going on in it too. We got the statue that's clipped into the floor, we've got this cube hole in the wall with the blackness on it. Over to the right side, there's even more of that same black oily substance, as well as what looks like 2 puddles of blood. It's hard to tell exactly what happened just from this, but it literally looks like someone got killed by one of those creatures that came out of that hole on the left and dragged into that bigger hole on the right, but it could be any number of things. I think it's meant to imply just something bad happened. He enters the house. This is probably the closest the Backrooms has ever gotten to an accurate recreation of a place. And when I say that, I mean the entity the Backrooms, not Kane Pixels himself or the series. This just looks like a normal house that someone could even be living in, besides one very obvious thing, which is the ominous black tarry footsteps on the ground that lead to a boot that looks like it crash landed from space, like an asteroid or something. Then, suddenly, Ravi hears another person speaking. We don't know who, but it seems to be Kane with a voice filter.
One way or another, just sooner is better than later, for sure. Because
though it's probably not who that is in character, of course. It's a man who seems to be in a normal house. The man, of course, threatens to call the police when Ravi begins to beg for help because he thinks some random person is in his home.
I don't know where I am. I need help.
you're on private property, you need to leave.
I'm trying, okay? I don't want to be
This is the guy who keeps coming around here trying to talk to my boys.
What? No, my name is Robbie, sir. I'm not trying to cause you any trouble. I'm just lost.
My family's trying to sleep. Leave or I'm calling the police.
But as their conversation goes on, we slowly realize that Ravi himself is in a copy of this man's house. Ravi does his best to explain the situation, as the man tries to check it out to make sure Ravi isn't lying.
Where the hell are you? I just looked outside and I don't see you.
I'm not... I'm in, like, a living room with a fish on the wall.
What? Is it some kind of game you're doing? Are you having a laugh over this?
I'm not. It's just, it sounds like you're on the other side of this wall, but this door goes nowhere.
Are you in my walls?
What? I don't know where I am. I've been trapped in this goddamn hell building for hours.
I don't understand. How is this possible? I can hear you, but...
I don't know, man. I don't know.
After their conversation goes back and forth, both realize the full strangeness of the situation, and the man finally attempts to help Ravi by opening their wall up to let him out because their house is under construction.
We're having some of the wainscoting here redone. I can open up the wall here, it's still loose, but I need you to move slowly, alright?
Thank you.
Come out with your hands first. I want to see your face, and we'll take things from there.
Thank you.
But then, unfortunately, seems to fall into the backrooms himself, or something, as he lets out one of the most guttural screams, and there's this other horrific noise that sounds like he's being sucked into a damn tornado.
I think it's...
What the fuck? What? Oh my god.
Oh my god, what the fuck? Hello? Harry, what happened? Hello?
Ravi, of course, responds with panic and drops the camera. Before we cut to what seems to be much later, Ravi is sitting alone in a room bathed in red light, seemingly chewing on his own hair in anxiety. He seems very tired and very weak. We don't know how much longer after the previous section this is. Hopefully he's just sleepy, but it could be assumed that like others, like Nicholas Bolton from earlier in the series, Ravi could possibly starve to death in the backrooms. We can hope not, but his situation doesn't look good. Ravi begins to reminisce about things from his past. A day at the park, the sky, a stolen bike. As the camera begins to die, he begins to remember even more and say that he wished things had been different.
I keep thinking about this moment when I was like 7. It was at that park back home when the windmill thing on the face used to scare me. It was hot out. Bike that got stolen. One of your friends were there. You can see your faces so clearly. I just want to go home. I'm sorry for all the stuff that I did and said.
It seems he's talking about one person in particular. Then, the camera dies, and that's the end of found footage number 3. Okay, actually, this is the end of found footage number 3, but that's not as emotionally impactful. Okay, so what did we learn? What was important going forward after watching found footage number 3? First, something entered or escaped the backrooms through the empty apartment below Ravi's house. That or the force of it showing up in his apartment shattered the glass, but that looks like a thing-shaped hole, so I'm thinking something escaped. Second, this is the first full intrusion upon our universe that has happened in the series. And by that, I mean like a full part of the backrooms literally appearing and breaking into our world. Obviously, plenty of people clip through the null zones, but those are basically invisible. This is a full-blown hallway that seems to have broken into his house or something like that, which the idea of a hallway breaking into your house is itself very strange and scary. Third, The Backrooms is continuing to expand, continuing to grow more and more complicated, continuing to just grow exponentially. There's an entire city within it now. I mean, of course, we saw that part in found footage number 1 with all those hallways, but like this is on a different scale, it seems. That brings us to point 4, and one of the most obvious other things is the monster that people call still life. This thing is the most human monster we've seen yet in the series. It moves like a person, well, like a person that's gone like super animalistic and feral. It groans and yells, sounding similar to our wiry friends that we've seen before. Maybe it's an evolution of them.
That is not a fucking person!
And it looks similar to the body from previous episodes. Now, from what people have said, Kane has basically confirmed that the monsters in the Backrooms, including this thing, are not like zombies. They're not reanimated corpses. A lot of people think that the wiry monsters are the Backrooms' attempts at recreating human beings. And that could mean that the still life creature itself is their newest attempt, and I don't know why I just called the Backroom its newest attempt at recreating people. We know the creatures know how to at least mimic human voices from Pitfalls. These monsters could be recreations of previously dead people. In fact, the idea of later in the series having people who look like people you know but aren't, they're literally like full-on recreations by the Backrooms, is kind of terrifying. In fact, we see some async scientists fight in one of the trailers for the Backrooms movie, which makes me think like, what if the Backrooms has already done that? What if it recreated one of the scientists and that's it? I mean, probably not, but it's an interesting thought. Also, I've had trouble putting words to this in ways that people can understand. I've basically been trying to say that the creatures have something to do with the dead bodies that we see. I'm not saying that when people die they transform, as I've said throughout this video. I think the Backrooms uses the bodies in some way, like as a nest or like for the information, and then creates the new creatures from the material of the previous bodies. Not that the creatures are literally transformed humans or zombie-like. That's like the best way I can put it. It seems to me that when a person dies, their body is absorbed by either the bacteria or the Backrooms itself, and then it uses that information to make these creatures as well as some of the buildings within the Backrooms. There have been enough times in this series where one of these creatures is near or implied to be near where someone died, and all of this black tarry stuff and the bacteria that I can say that confidently. I'll also bring this up before I talk about it at the end, but it is entirely possible, if not plausible, that the still lifes and the life forms made up of bacteria are two completely separate things, which would be incredibly interesting to have these two separate hostile entities that both happen to come up in the Backrooms, one made by the Backrooms itself, and one that just so happened to evolve from the very specific conditions within the Backrooms. It is entirely possible that there is a sort of living bacteria that has some form of sentience in the Backrooms, and then that the Backrooms itself is a completely separate sort of entity that just happens to have this other thing existing within it. Which would mean that the still lifes being a creation of the Backrooms is its attempt at taking people, and the bacteria also just happen to be involved with people who die. It's all very cool. This also gets into something that I mentioned in the original outro of this video, which will come up later, of course, but about the Backrooms basically being a doppelganger of our universe, meaning it would create a doppelganger of everything, and, you know, doppelgangers can be kind of scary. Anyway, point number 5. This is an extension of 2 of the previous points, but our world and the Backrooms are becoming more interconnected. The Backrooms is entering our world, literally, and getting better at recreating parts of it in itself. It's even possible that these recreations, getting closer together, make the barrier between our world and that of the Backrooms thinner, as was experienced by Ravi, and the guy who literally fell in through his house. Those are the thoughts I have on found footage number 3. This is up there as one of the best found footage videos in this series, maybe on YouTube, and probably the best video in this series altogether, and I can only imagine it will be outdone by the movie. Which, by the way, may feature a new version of the still life creature, as there's a little frame at the end of one of the trailers featuring this. Could just be a dude, but I don't know. Something about this doesn't seem right, and why else would it be here at the end for no reason? Backrooms, Lighting and Tile Survey, November 15th, 1989. This video is interesting right out of the gate for multiple reasons. If you go back, the Backrooms First Contact video, the one where Async establishes an actual concurrent connection to the Backrooms, takes place nearly 1 month earlier than this video in October. That would actually make this one of the earlier videos taking place after they established a connection with the Backrooms, but obviously one of the latest videos based on the posting date on YouTube. The video itself is presented as an async research presentation, but also has a Department of Energy symbol in the background at the start, meaning it is in some way connected to our government, even this early on in the timeline. The person doing the report is one Dr. Julia Meisner, who I don't believe we've heard of yet. We start with footage of an async team member and a few others entering into the backrooms. It's noteworthy that he talks about how cold it apparently is in the backrooms, which hasn't been mentioned before.
It is incredibly cold. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, we'll actually have a decent heating system down here. That'd be nice. Die of hypothermia.
This is also before they've established that outer operating base, which we saw earlier on in the series, but takes place later chronologically. This video has an incredibly classic Backrooms vibe with the general hazy, spooky music and atmosphere before cutting to a more scientific approach, though still matching that vibe and the general tension that the music and the sound quality creates.
Using an insulated toolkit, we carefully isolated the light fixture from its electrical conduit.
I love it because despite the fact that they're literally just walking around some yellow rooms and talking about light fixtures and tiles, the music and the fuzziness in the atmosphere all makes it feel so foreign and alien and like unsettling. We get shots of these tiles as well as the inside of the ceiling, of the yellow walls, parts of the back rooms. He also says,
I don't know, I'm not a vent guy, I don't know.
And I just wanted to point out this funny comment.
There's no insulation on top and I'm seeing a bunch on the floor above.
Of course, we already know there are multiple floors to the backrooms, though it is interesting to see that they're insulated as well as ventilated, which would make sense considering how cold it is. The fact that the backrooms has air conditioning is pretty nice. Or maybe it's something else that makes it so cold. Of course, a voiceover begins, and this is more than likely Dr. Julia Meisner explaining their experimentation with the lights and other things in the backrooms.
Rudimentary early testing, but everything seems pretty congruent with what you might expect from one of the trapper lights you could pull out of the ceiling in this building right here.
They attempted to find a source of power for the lights, though they found none. They even removed the light itself, some of the conduit, and bits of the tile, which are all apparently non-standard. What follows is an examination of all of these different things, which finds that they are actually made of relatively standard materials and even seem to have been manufactured in our world, or at least copies of things that were manufactured in our world.
Several labels were marked on various components of the troffer. So on the ballast, we found markings for marked it as a universal ballast, Type A, manufactured in 1975.
The main difference being that the measurements of all of them are slightly off, despite all of the fittings being relatively standard. Like, you could replace one of these light bulbs with one of the ones from our world if it was that right size.
The ceiling tile extracted measures 1.27 meters by 1.14 meters, which is certainly not standard.
Something interesting to me is the emphasis on the hum of the lights. She said this is more than likely because of the age of the things, but that they are also well made enough that they are all still functioning, which means they could have been there for a very long time.
So the ballast emits a prominent 120 hertz hum, but this is due to magnetostriction and core vibration. But the noise may be exacerbated by loose lamination plates or degradation of the insulating potting material over time. So it's definitely an indication that this has been running for a little bit. I mean, despite its age, the ballast is functional.
As mentioned earlier, it seems they were all possibly manufactured in our world, or at least copies of things from our world, which is obviously the strangest bit. Almost all of these parts are marked with markings from our world of manufacturers, serial numbers. Basically, besides the measurements, as I said earlier, everything's standard.
Everything seems pretty congruent with what you might expect from one of the troffer lights you could pull out of the ceiling in this building right here. So nothing too strange, but that maybe makes things even stranger.
The video ends with her stating that they were possibly built for long-term indefinite use out of relatively sturdy materials, before we zoom in on the label that was stamped, which obviously means this is pretty important. And yeah, it is. If you remember, the earliest date we've seen in the series so far was Overflow, which was dated August 2nd, 1972. That would put this fixture within the same time frame as Ivan Beck's earliest known experiment involving whatever this green energy is and what it has to do with the Backrooms. So yeah, interesting stuff. Static Dead End, May 29th, 1990. We hear a discussion between some different scientists.
Oh, I don't like this, and you shouldn't either. What are you trying to get out of this, Marvin?
One of importance is Marvin, who has been a long-standing character along with Peter Tinch, and was the one who was confronted by Tinch in the Backrooms, which resulted in the shooting of Mark. Marvin is obviously upset about everything involved in that whole situation, and raises many of the points that I did. How fishy everything is, how it could end up being one of them, or getting whacked by the government or Async themselves.
They killed him, George. He was alive and well, and you can't tell me for a second that the United States Department of Energy didn't have the resources to fix things. Are you kidding me?
It's not worth dying on this hill.
Yeah, but what if next time it's you? Or me?
Marv, come on.
You want to put me down like an animal over a minor fucking hiccup?
The other scientists aren't as sympathetic and don't seem to have the same moral backbone that Marvin does.
You nor I know exactly what happened, and frankly, it shouldn't be something that concerns us.
It's funny, though, that Marvin frames it as being cost-effective, and George, one of the others in the conversation, basically says it won't happen because they want to be disappeared like Peter, which is like a crazy response.
Give a speech at my memorial? It's not cost-effective, George.
Yeah, but we're not going to let that happen, are we? You know how I know? You're the fourth person I've had this conversation with. Nobody wants a repeat of what just happened.
The whole conversation is honestly crazy. The scenery throughout the video just seems to be of different parts of the Async facility until the camera finally settles on the portal between our world and the Backrooms. I keep calling it a portal, but they specifically call it the threshold, which does give a much more sci-fi feeling in our modern world. The video ends with George manning the camera and going into the room from pitfalls that has been hidden from us for so long. Well, okay, so long for me. This video came out over a year ago at this point, so I'm sure everyone else has already seen it. It's interesting to see Async seeing some of the stranger parts of the Backrooms finally, as it seems many of them have stayed in the very small marked area they've been working in. I actually like George's reaction here because honestly I think it's even less shocked than I am watching it.
Oh, okay, you weren't kidding. This is interesting.
I also like the little chair on the hill here. I don't know why, it's just like, hey, king of the hill. That catches us up with the YouTube exclusive stuff. Honestly, Static Dead End, more than anything, feels like a video to just sum up what has happened so far before the movie comes out. It's literally a Static Dead End. It is where we are until the next thing happens. And the next thing is Backrooms, official teaser HD A24. The trailer is interesting to me because without the camera filter on it, it's pretty obviously CG, even if it is pretty good CG. And remember, this is just a teaser, but it's still neat to see. I also really like the first big idea of why the Backrooms is so messed up.
All these rooms, this place builds them, actually more like it remembers them. And the more times it remembers something, the less it does.
I really like this line, like a lot. At least from this small bit of dialogue here, I really like what I've heard from the movie so far. Let's move on to the next trailer. Backrooms, official trailer HD. The first thing I want to note is the fact that the place that connects to the backrooms in the movie is a furniture store, which I just love, and also goes back to found footage number 3, and how I hope the main character Clark doesn't die and then his memories make that room or whatever. Considering how much of the series just has random furniture all over the place, a furniture store is kind of a perfect setting to create. It's like ironic almost. Though if we do go back, this opening shot does kind of look CG, and I will say the cars do date us to probably the 90s, which, yeah, I confirmed earlier in the video. It's a fun idea that the Backrooms copied the store that he owns. Not to mention the original Backrooms photo was of a furniture store closing for renovations, so yeah. Apparently, the song in the trailer, which I don't think I can play, is also pretty popular in the liminal community, which I didn't know. Now, I do know that the artist made Comfort Chain, and I really like that song, so. What I found more interesting was that there was some kind of announcer speaker speaking in a different language, which is apparently Urdu, and is the message that was on the golden record that we shot into space, and is currently very, very far from Earth, or at least is supposed to be. The golden record was essentially a message that we sent into space in case there are any other sentient beings out there. The message, the long and short of it, is, hey, we're from Earth, we welcome you, we're cool. Which, you know, considering everything going on right now, I don't know how true that is, but hey, the idea is great. I do gotta say, I love hearing the same musical tones in the trailer that Kane uses in all of his videos in the YouTube series. I do really like a lot of the shots in this trailer, and the fact that Kane kind of goes back to his roots with a found footage type sequence, which we already know from other trailers is going to be a big thing in the movie. Now, I'm just going off of information that is already public, but it seems that the main through line and story of the movie is Clark's therapist, this is Clark by the way, going into the backrooms to find him after he disappeared, and then we learn more about his story through her experience. Of course, we know from the interview that Kane said this takes place in 1990, and I believe we can see some security footage that give possibly a more specific date. But we also know that the Backrooms doesn't seem to work on the same time scale that our world does. The date here is June 29th, 1990, but considering he said June and July, I'm guessing that Clark got lost in the Backrooms in June, and his therapist went in sometime in July. We also see some men in hazmat suits, probably employees of Async, fighting, which is really interesting, like I mentioned earlier. It's important to note that the time on this security camera footage also dates the movie after the death, air quotes, of Peter Tinch, which would make this movie the latest point in the Async side of the timeline. We know the latest certain point in the whole series is 1996, when Kane's camera was found from found footage number 1. But apparently, in the background of the man falling into the backrooms in found footage number 3, you can hear a freecreditreport.com commercial which only played between 2007 and 2009, meaning that 2009-ish is actually the final time we know that is in the series officially. Funny enough, while listening to the audio of the man in found footage number 3, I heard a commercial as well, but it was someone saying, which I found to be this Gene Simmons Dr. Pepper Cherry commercial, which, yes, is from roughly 2009 to 2010.
Dr. Pepper Cherry is amazingly smooth. Dr. Pepper Cherry is amazingly smooth.
But premiered in 2009, so yeah, it's confirmed by me. First, I think Marvin and the situation surrounding Peter Tinch's death might be a big deal in the movie, or at least touched on a little bit, especially with how close that event takes place to the movie. I also think Async is going to run into our unfortunate and intrepid adventurers in the back room and possibly cause some problems for them. It also seems that the trailer implies that Clark and those who went in didn't come back out, as the therapist woman goes in there to look for them and ends up in an unfortunate situation herself. I think this is more than likely because, look, let's be real. This is a standalone movie that is being made in an already established series using some pretty good actors. I don't know if they will come back into the series and play these same characters again, so they're probably more than likely a one and done for the series, which either means they're all going to die or just kind of disappear in a way that will be satisfying for their story. That's my theorization, at least. Going back, seeing this therapist woman walk down a hallway towards the light here reminds me of that scene at the end of Found Footage 1 where the protagonist accidentally drops his camera down a hole, which could have been him, but of course he met a different fate. Hopefully she doesn't meet the same fate, and honestly it does look like there are going to be a few recreations of type scenes and cinematic things that Kane already did at other points in the series. Maybe as little Easter eggs or just Kane wanting to flex types of shots that he already really liked. Again, this final shot in the trailer feels important as well. We see one of the characters running and screaming to be pulled back up, and
Pull me up! Pull me up!
I think the thing here is probably what's chasing him. If you ask me, this is going to be a monster similar to that of the Still Life monster, a creature that looks almost human but definitely isn't. Before we move on to my finishing thoughts, here is the overall timeline of the series so far in the in-series chronology, as well as where the movie is going to be, and some of my thoughts on each episode and their importance along with it. And originally the outro was next, but A24 decided to release another promo, so I got a little bit more to cover. First of all, gotta love the song Still Life being in this trailer.
Keep up.
The song is fantastic. Second, the cinematography for the more cinematic parts is already really great looking. I love this shot right here, and I'm very excited to see how well Kane flexes his directing chops with a full-blown cinema budget. We also see Clark discovering an async bag full of stuff, which seems like it'll be important, like someone was coming into that, because that looks like a lot of information, like someone was running away with it. More statements about the Backrooms misremembering themselves, which again, makes me think the Backrooms itself is almost like a copy of a malfunctioning mind trying to right itself or fix itself. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but human memory works on this idea of when you remember something, you're actually remembering the previous remembrance and not the original thing. So I feel like that type of thing is important for the Backrooms, but I'll talk more on that later. I think this shot itself is very interesting. While the buildings in the background are different, they're similar enough to some of the buildings we see in an earlier shot in the trailer that feels like there could be some type of connection there. We see the Splendor Sun, which we've seen a few times in this series and some of Kane's other works. The Splendor Sun, by the way, just symbolizes the divine or something incredible, and apparently Kane wants to make a series based around it, but he said that could take a very long time. We have a flash of a dead man in an async hazmat suit, someone running in what seems to be some flip-flops. I think this is the woman that came in with Clark, this woman here. As well as a hand possibly being dragged off screen right here, which, woof, we're finally going to get to see some on-screen deaths, like, since Found Footage number 1, it seems. We even see Clark and his therapist together in the Backrooms, it seems. So hey, they're going to get to meet up. Also, I've mentioned it a few times, this might not actually be a still life. This might just be Clark because it's wearing the same clothes that Clark is here. But yeah, it shows this shot and it seems like this is important. I don't know. There's just something so off about this shot. Maybe Clark becomes a still life, or maybe he goes crazy. We don't know. Alright, and now we're going to put my original video's conclusion here with all the theorizing and some additional theorizing, and then I'm going to have my predictions for the movie after that. So yeah, here is what I think might be going on in the Backrooms as a series as a whole, and then after that, what might happen in the movie. So we've gone through the whole series. We've looked at everything that I think we need to. What are my thoughts and theories on the Backrooms by Kane Pixels? What is the future of the series, and what does this all mean? What is the underlying story and plot? Well, I have a lot of thoughts, so I want to start back at the beginning. The actual beginning, 1972. The episode Overflow is the earliest date on the timeline and implies Ivan Beck doing an experiment that would eventually lead to the creation of the low proximity magnetic distortion system. The result is different than what we've seen so far, giving off the iconic yellow energy that establishes the connection to the Backrooms as we've seen, but also putting off the mysterious green energy that we've seen in different parts as well. We know the yellow energy or light to be the byproduct of the low proximity magnetic distortion system when it creates the threshold to the Backrooms. This green light, however, has appeared many times without a concrete purpose to this point. This not only creates a greater mystery around Ivan, but also this energy, and has led me to a few different lines of thinking for this moment in the timeline. This was possibly the moment that Ivan Beck established a connection to the Backrooms for the first time. Ivan Beck has been a background character in the series, but an important one, being not only the vice director of Async,
Ivan Beck, vice director of the Async Foundation, described the intention,
but also seemingly the leader on Project KV-31, and mentioned consistently throughout the entire series.
Mr. Beck.
Ivan Beck.
Dr. Baxton.
We know from as far back as the third test that his knowledge of the Backrooms is greater than it should be, as he knows that it could offer humanity unlimited storage space.
This program is granted sufficient backing from the United States government will offer a solution to all current and future storage and residential needs and save billions of dollars on property construction and management.
Which someone would only understand if they had intimate knowledge of the Backrooms. How he has this knowledge, we don't know. Is Overflow him accidentally creating the Backrooms? Did he send himself there or see it? Did he somehow contact himself in the future or another dimension? I thought that a possibility because of this single frame from Damage Control, showing what looks to be an older man encountering that green energy. But Ivan knows more about the Backrooms than the series has let on to this point, and this moment seems to be an incredibly important one. If we go off the opening and ending, the world has changed after this test in 1972, as the sky from the start is mirrored at the end. To touch on this more, I do think that the green light energy, whatever you want to call it, that we saw in found footage number 2, as well as Overflow, is technically the creation energy that the Backroom uses to create, move rooms around, etc. It does seem that the room the protagonist is in found footage number 2 is being destroyed or changed in some way. That makes it more likely that what happened in Overflow is the actual creation in some way, shape, or form of the Backrooms. And considering what we know about Ivan Beck overall, I think he definitely knows more about the Backrooms than have been let on to this point in the series. He and Async fooled the government for some reason. He did some sort of experiment in Overflow that used the same green light that we see in found footage number 2 and found footage number 1 and so many other places throughout the series. So, Ivan Beck has known about the Backrooms for a while. How long, we don't really know. But he's had some way to gain an understanding of it by 1988, aka the third test. This understanding is that it could offer storage solutions for the future, which means he knows of its twisting and never-ending nature. This is all for certain. Knowing what we know about the mutated bacteria within the Backrooms, it's possible that his experiments somehow created it, or at least that he established a connection to it in some way to give him this understanding of the dimension. As I mentioned earlier, I believe there's many things the Backrooms itself truly could be. There's the cut and dry idea that it's simply an alternate dimension similar to our own, but in ways that we find bizarre or unnerving. But that's no fun. So, here's a summation of what we know about the Backrooms in the series so we can start coming to some conclusions. It is potentially an unlimited space. It's made up of different types of space that look similar to places within our own world. That it connects to our own world through portals known as null zones that are invisible but intersect and pull you or drop you into the Backrooms. These null zones do not follow time as we know it, bringing people in from certain points and taking them out in others. We know this can go forwards, as with Peter Tench and the protagonist from found footage number 1. We even know that people within the Backrooms can be transported to different points in time in the Backrooms. It's possible that it also goes backwards in time, but we haven't seen an example of that just yet that I know of. It also mutates people who die within it. It could possibly mutate people living as well, but we don't have an example of that yet either. The monsters that it creates are black, oily, and tendril-like, and can speak or at least mimic English, and are seemingly incredibly aggressive. These monsters are more than likely made up of Hay bacillus, a common bacterium that is found on Earth in the human gut, but also in certain layers of Earth's soil. When someone dies, their body is seemingly mutated by this bacterium, which not only transforms them into one of these monsters, but seemingly can also change the landscape of the Backrooms itself to fit their memories. Now, of course, when I say mutate, I don't literally mean that it's changing the bodies or turning people into monsters. I mean taking the bodies and transforming that raw material into something else. Now, it's difficult to say whether the monsters are made of hay bacillus or not, or if the hay bacillus just has some type of function in the transformation or the consumption and acquisition of data into the Backrooms itself. I also think it's interesting looking back on found footage number 3 and seeing that one little clip where he sees like a bug or some type of little tendrils coming through a wall, making me wonder if the entire Backrooms themselves aren't somehow made up of hay bacillus or something else, though that also would throw off the whole green light energy thing that changes the rooms in a way. It's all very interesting. Like, why are the monsters as aggressive if they are meant to be recreations of people? Unless the attempted recreations become more animal-like simply because they aren't as mentally evolved as real humans. And this gets back into what is the function of the Backrooms recreating things? Why is it recreating rooms? It seems to do that the best because they aren't real things, and it also doesn't seem to be able to recreate natural phenomenon either. We see in found footage number 3 the walls with clouds on it. Anyway, as of right now, we only know of one person who has escaped the Backrooms who was lost in it, and that is Peter Tench. And it was through the established async threshold. Possibly Ivan Beck escaped it as well, but we don't have confirmation on that, or if he's ever actually been to the Backrooms, maybe he just saw it. So, with all that information in mind, what do I think the Backrooms itself is? Now, before we get fully into it, remember that this original outro was made before found footage number 3, our lighting and tile survey, ever came out. I'm going to leave it as it was in its original state because I still think the ideas in it are very interesting, but I'm going to add more to the points now. My favorite theory that I had while working on this video is that the Backrooms itself is a living entity, as I mentioned earlier. An interdimensional predator of sorts that connects to our dimension to feed on humans. The null zones are a way for it to do that, bringing people in and then letting them die. The hay bacillus then eats them away, sort of like it's digesting them. It then absorbs their memories, and possibly consciousnesses into itself as a sort of sustenance. That could be part of what the video I remember is about. Someone being absorbed into this strange hive mind and feeling like they're joining something greater. At the most extreme, there is a possibility that it would eventually absorb our entire reality, as the Backrooms folded in on our dimension, as is mentioned in the video I remember. The monsters created by the hay bacillus could be seen as a sort of white blood cell if it is an entity, killing those that trespass there as if they are viruses. This theory basically establishes the Backrooms as a sort of terrifying interdimensional predator animal. In this theory, it wouldn't necessarily kill with ill intent, but be running on instincts, a sort of natural function. It does what it does just because it does what it does. There is also the possibility that it is doing it purposefully, that it is some kind of hive mind like a biological computer, made up of dead beings, possibly even from other dimensions, and it has come to ours to assimilate us into this one massive being, sort of like the convergence event from Dead Space. Both of these ideas are terrifying thoughts to me, especially because, at least so far, we don't know if the Backrooms can communicate or does communicate in any way. This takes me all the way back to the episode Missing Persons, when the words, "if anybody, blame him," flash on the screen. Just how ominous that message is. I imagine it means Ivan Beck, but what are we blaming him for? And who is saying that to us? Like, who is communicating that to us? Like, what are we, that's scary. Of course, there are so many other possibilities. The Backrooms could itself be a manifestation of human consciousness, a sort of mirror world brought on by the experiment Ivan did, in which all of our collective subconsciouses have combined into this other place that is slowly eating into our world. And it establishes itself in this imperfect way, as the human mind is imperfect and incredibly flawed. You know, it's a biological computer. We do know for a fact that it can connect and bring people in from different times, as it does to our different protagonists in found footage number 1 and number 2. We also know that the amount of people disappearing into it is incredibly high, and only gets higher as time goes on. Another idea is that it could be a corruption of some kind, or even an illness. You could see it as the data from our world being changed in ways that it shouldn't be. The Backrooms does work in a sort of non-Euclidean way, basically meaning it doesn't follow space the way we understand it in our world. Of course, again, this could mean that the universe of the Backrooms is a simulation of sorts, but I think it could also be interesting if this corruption, or glitches, or whatever you want to call it, wasn't purely like data as we understand it. I mean, data itself is just a word we've given for information, and even biological things have information of types in them. As I said earlier, the Earth, like us, is a living being, a sort of biological computer. But what if we extended that line of thinking to the universe? We could think of the Backrooms almost like how we think of cancer in human beings. Cancer in people is a mutation that causes cells to grow uncontrollably and spread. The Backrooms goes on infinitely and seems to be taking in parts of our world. So far, only people's and a car, but who's to say it wouldn't take more? What if the Backrooms is a sort of dimensional cancer? Instead of smoking cigarettes, our dimension was infected by the actions of Ivan Beck. As I said earlier, if we go back to the disappearing car video and its title, which translates through the ISBN listing search to the yellow wallpaper, the Backrooms could be a warped copy of our own dimension, just based off of that idea, or, well, kind of. In the yellow wallpaper, the woman goes mad and eventually believes she was the woman behind the wallpaper and that she has escaped. This also summoned up the idea to me that the Backrooms could be attempting to destroy our world to replace it. That the two different dimensions are sort of holding the same space in reality that they can't share. A sort of dimensional doppelganger, if you will. Though I think this would kind of lean away from the science fiction themes of the series, because where does Hey Bacillus fit into that? Having said all that, let's move back to the things that we are certain of, for the most part. Peter Tinch was killed by Async or is alive, either having escaped or was captured by Async. I don't think he was killed by a rock. I earnestly believe that. I hope he escaped, but Async's story does not add up, and there's a possibility that they're being set up to be one of the two big villains in the series, the other being the Backrooms itself, of course. I don't think that Peter went insane, but as I said earlier, we don't know if people who stayed in the Backrooms for long periods of time don't have things happen to them, or that they don't mutate. And he was in there for like 3 days without a hazmat suit. What if Peter is out in the world and mutating and becomes a scary stickman running around the city he's in? Ivan Beck is going to eventually play a bigger role in the series. How? I don't know. The series has only established him knowing the sort of infinite nature of the Backrooms and not much else, considering he seemingly didn't know of the monsters inside of it, at least that we know of so far. This makes me think that he possibly created it, or at least saw it, but didn't truly understand it in the 70s. You change in the Backrooms and become a monster, memory seemingly being transferred to the landscape of the space when you die. What purpose this serves, we don't know solidly, besides that it creates these monsters that seemingly want to kill other people. We don't know how sentient these monsters are. Could they be like us, slowly evolving? Or are they mere copycats, learning to trick us so that they can hunt us more effectively and get us out of the Backrooms? The Backrooms is itself untethered to time. It seems to be connected to all times, or at least many different points in times. Maybe in that it is a sort of meeting of all points of time. It exists outside of time as we know it, in a sense. Async as a company is playing with fire. They know of the dangers, but are continuing, either because they truly believe in what they're doing, or they just see dollar signs, or maybe Ivan Beck knows something that we really don't. That green energy, time travel energy, my friend Matt actually told me while I was editing this video that green energy is technically stronger than yellow, which does make sense considering it seems that this green energy light just looks really powerful and wild and kind of badass. Maybe it's the energy of creation within the Backrooms, adding and subtracting rooms or moving them around. Who knows? All in all, this series has a lot of mysteries for us. The futures of characters such as Marvin, Peter, and Ivan, what the Backrooms is, or at least what it is doing to our world as it interacts with it, And here's where Modern Me is going to step in and give a few secondary conclusions that are meant to add on to those first. The 3 additional videos that released in the series after my original coverage did add a lot of new context and ideas to the series. The biggest of those being the still life entities, but the addition of the Backrooms being made up of copies of things from our world, down to identifying labels, is also interesting and important feeling. We also got to see the first real signs of what you'd call clipping in static dead end. I think one of the more interesting ideas I had while making this and doing research was that the still life entity and the life forms are actually completely separate things. That would be interesting because it would mean that the life forms and the Backrooms itself have an almost parasitic relationship. The bacteria life forms just happen to be there, and the still life are actually the creation of the Backrooms, though I have no proof of this yet. No one really does. As I stated earlier, I thought it possible that the still life are actually an evolution of the life forms, considering the life forms began to speak English like people did to try and copy them. It's also possible that the unique environment of the Backrooms allowed a common bacterium to form a sort of hive mind intelligence that just happens to also exist within this anomaly of space-time we call the Backrooms. There are also theories that the Backroom is some type of simulation, and that would also play back into the idea of the Backrooms itself being a sort of corruption within that simulation. I don't know if I really like those ideas, but it would be interesting if Kane managed to pull it off in a satisfying way if that was the case. It is very possible that it has something to do with another dimension invading our own, considering some of the biggest inspirations for Kane as a filmmaker is surprisingly Valve, as I mentioned earlier, and a lot of Valve's works are about interdimensionality and portals. Half-Life and Portal specifically are literally about, well, portals, and also another dimension and our dimension interacting with other dimensions in ways that cause harm to our own dimension. Not to mention that this would also play into the idea that the bacteria life forms and the still lifes are separate entities, because Valve also liked to do that. In Half-Life, a lot of the creatures that actually happen end up being aggressive and bad in the world besides the Combine are actually just monsters from other worlds and dimensions that happen to pass through into ours with the rest of them. And as I mentioned much earlier, along with Kane saying the Backrooms, he sees it as like a neutral entity. The whole idea of the Red Sun and impending disaster is the Backrooms could just be seen as almost like a natural disaster. To give a few far more nebulous final ideas without putting strong labels or intents on them, consider all of this. The Backrooms is in some way sentient. What if it's a copy of a human mind? Maybe Ivan Beck. Maybe even a corruption of the total consciousness of all people, as I mentioned earlier. If the Backrooms is, as Clark said, really trying to remember things but forgetting each time, that is very human. Real human memory is incredibly flawed and recreationary. When we remember things, each time we do, we are actually remembering the previous reconstructed remembrance rather than the original situation. Meaning, in a way, we forget more and more each time we remember something as well, filling in the details with our current life context. If the Backrooms only exists within the context of itself, wouldn't it make sense that it would start to remember things in some strange way because the only source of reference was itself and whatever happened into it? This could make, in a new perspective, the green light we see, that of creation and destruction, as a more synaptic fire. The thought of the Backrooms firing off to make more rooms. But what is it trying to remember and why? Why did it create the still life? As Kane said in the interview with Wendigoon, again, he sees the Backrooms as a neutral entity, meaning it isn't evil, it doesn't have good or bad intent, it just is. Things that are natural, as would be in the Backrooms in that situation, can still be scary. A tornado can be scary. A bear can be scary. So its natural prerogative is to recreate and try to remember things for whatever reason. Okay, well then what is the bacteria? Well, it's obviously connected to the Backrooms in some way. Whether it was evolved in that specific environment but is separate, or is itself a part of the Backrooms and its ecosystem directly. We know it seems to form from bodies that die in the Backrooms. We know the rooms also seem to form from the memories of dead people. Are these things hand in hand or more coincidental? Does it just happen that the monsters form nests of sorts that they grow out of, while the Backrooms itself takes data from people as they die there? Or do the bacterium play a part in the rooms forming as well? What I'm saying is, do the backrooms and the bacteria literally, are they like hand in hand, they need each other, or is it just happenstance that the bacteria is there and it happens to interact with the backrooms? Timeline-wise, we do know that the backrooms take people from at least 2009, meaning they're still around at that point, or that they are a danger to people even if past the point of the end of their existence, whenever that might be. We also don't know if they can go back in time and take things. Like, we really haven't seen, say, an old, like, jalopy or some Victorian furniture hanging around just yet. So what does all this mean? Well, for whatever reason, the backroom's purpose seems to be to recreate things. To what end, we don't know. It even goes so far as to attempt to recreate people. Whether the life forms are the same thing as the still lifes, or just two hostile entities that happen to exist in the same environment, we also don't know. We do know that the rooms themselves and those entities seem derived in some way from people dying or coming into the back rooms. There also seems to be some kind of hazy post-existence for people who die in the back rooms. Obviously, the rooms are created from people's memories, but does that mean that the people are in some way part of the back rooms, or does it simply extract their dying thoughts as information to make them? Ravi, when he is sitting bathed in that red light at the end, begins to remember a specific day that was important to him. Does the backroom somehow coax those memories out of people to collect that data, to take those last thoughts and recreate them? That's where I sit. Why? Kane said that someone somewhere knew what was going on in an interview with Anthony Padilla. A comment left on one of his videos that had like one like that laid everything out. I think about that comment often and what that person probably had to say, and I really want to know. For me, it seems to me like the Backrooms is, well, it feels like it has some sort of sentience or is connected to humanity in some way besides just being created through science. Some form of will. How strongly, I don't know. To me, it almost seems like a malfunctioning person's mind. A person with short-term memory loss trying to remember things for whatever reason, but we'll see. As for my predictions for the movie, well, it seems to me like there's going to be some type of conflict between async staff within the film, that more than one async scientist is rebelling or trying to sneak out information. Clark and his friends obviously get lost in the backrooms for quite some time, and Clark's therapist does come in to find him. I do think most, if not all of them, will suffer some unfortunate fate, considering that the movie is what it is, a movie, and these actors may or may not reappear in Kane's actual work going forward. And if they do, they will probably be played by different people. I believe we'll see some monsters. There's a Twitter clip showing one of the life forms in the movie, and I've seen a lot of buzz and rumors saying that the still lifes play a big part within the film as well. I'm excited to see the film, whether it progresses the story or not, and I hope that this was a satisfying enough collection of my ideas and thoughts, because it is really hard to come up with a certain thing on what the Backrooms is without definite information. I'm excited to see the movie. Now, time for my original outro. Thank you. This was a really fun series to watch after The Oldest View. I bring that up because The Oldest View felt as if it had a lot more subtext and sort of evolution in it. The Backrooms feels as if it has less subtext in it, but I still like a lot of the themes that run throughout it, and some of them are similar to those of The Oldest View. Themes like things of memory, of destruction and death, and amalgamation into something greater, of corporate greed, how people will play with dangerous things they don't understand in the name of profit and growth or discovery, and ignore the consequences. And, like The Oldest View, he used a lot of different techniques, from straight-up found footage, filming to third-person type views, and watching the series through televisions as a sort of unseen eye. Possibly a peek into this alternate dimension. I like that Kane plays with these types of things, whether they have meaning or not. A lot of the methods Kane uses to deliver story and themes started here in the Backrooms, but felt improved in The Oldest View. Lots of cutaways, breakoffs to different scenes that are all connected to our core story. YouTube is a great platform for video like this, in my opinion, because we as an audience don't have an inherent belief as to how the video should function. This allows people like Kane to experiment with the way they deliver narrative with more freedom than typical cinema, as well as the audience to interact with it in different ways, which is why I featured some of the comments from his videos in this video, besides just liking what the commenters had to add in general. And the Backrooms itself as a series is a product of internet culture. This series was made by Kane Pixels, but is an amalgamation of an online meme and lore created by people like you and me. From the 4chan creepypasta, to the Backrooms wikis, to the games, to the liminal pictures. People inspiring people, and talking about things that they care about. And that is beautiful to me. So, what have we learned today? Hopefully, something. I at least hope I gave you something new to think about, even if I don't really have all of the answers. Maybe I just entertained you while you ate a meal. That's the least I could hope for. The Backrooms series by Kane Pixels is incredibly expansive, told in many parts, with breadcrumbs littered to lead us to certain conclusions. I've shared my thoughts with you today, and I really enjoyed watching this series. I'd love it if you'd share your thoughts by commenting or leaving a like. Let me know if I really did make you think about something new or gave you a new idea to apply to this series. I'd also like to throw a little section in here at the end, some recommended reading, if you will. Again, my friend Matt said I should throw Isaac Asimov's The Gods Themselves here. He said it plays with similar ideas to the Backrooms, including parallel universes and all that. The Shining is another great piece of media that features a haunted, strange place. I would recommend the book more if you want those backroom vibes than the movie. The movie is good, but the book just has a lot more of those kind of twisting turns and unreality to it. House of Leaves, though I haven't read it, it has sat on my shelf for years, is apparently one of the greatest horror books of all time, and has a similar winding story and narrative structure to the Backrooms. Basically Remedy games in general, but specifically Alan Wake, Control, and Alan Wake 2. All of these games feature like strange dimensions and monsters and non-Euclidean geometry, as well as time travel, mindfuck, and like Lovecraftian monsters and things like that. It's really good. And also, of course, Silent Hill, just the whole series of Silent Hill. Silent Hill is kind of like the Backrooms video games before the Backrooms. They're a lot more psychological, and they're definitely a lot clunkier than a lot of modern horror games, but they are fantastic. The whole Silent Hill series, even the bad ones, have something good about them. I might make a video about that in the future. And a quick few others, because this video is already really long. I mentioned Stranger Things and the works of David Cronenberg at the start, Dead Space as well, Cabin in the Woods, and of course the works of H.P. Lovecraft. If you have a recommendation for something that has these Backrooms vibes, the Oldest View vibes, please throw them down in the comments below. I'm sure other people would love to see your recommendations. I know I would, and thank you. And Kane Pixels, if you're watching this, hi, I really enjoy your work and I look forward to the Backrooms movie. Also, Matt Pat, if you're watching this, give me a shout out. And last but not least, I'd like to thank my friends and family for supporting me. This has been my best year on YouTube yet in my nearly 30 years of living. My friend Matt for translating Joo Hee Yoon into Korean for me and telling me about energy wavelengths. My friend Philip and Daniel for being my watchers. They watch my videos and read over my scripts with me, and they really do help me. They give me new ideas. Kane Pixels for making such a fantastic horror series. My grandmother for being such a strong person who has helped me in my life. My grandfather, God rest his soul. And you guys. If it weren't for viewers like you, 2023 would not have been my best year on YouTube in my entire life. So I want to give you a heartfelt thank you. Anyway, I'm GhostsOnHoliday, and remember, where the body... fuck.